My name is Mark Moss, and I make these videos to change the way you think about money because almost everything you have learned is wrong. Yeah, so I was also thinking about, as you were saying, how Australia hasn't had like really a recession in 23 years. And so there's this complacency going on. And so then I think back to this generational theory that got popularized, for the fourth turning, which is the good times creating soft men, the soft men creating bad times. And so if there hasn't been any hardship to go through, as you said, for 23 years, then those good times, they lasted way too long and people got super complacent. And so I think that's interesting as well. One thing I think of, and being in America, I hear talks of them, potentially, maybe the government throws this out there to see what the reaction is and pulls it back. But they floated around. Well, one, I think the borders are closing to people that don't take the medicine, don't take the jab, we'll say that. And then they've talked about in the United States even making it where maybe you couldn't even fly. That's at least been floated out there. And even closing interstate travel, kind of like what's happened in Australia. And so when I hear that, I'm like, well, shoot, if that's going to happen, I'm out. Like, I don't want to be locked down either. I would rather go kind of travel around in the world, kind of what you're doing. I'm just curious what the mindset do you think is the difference? Because some people are just so used to it, they're just so okay with it that they're fine just being locked down, they want to stay. Is it that they don't care enough about freedom, or that maybe they're not in a position where they can do that? I mean, what was the mindset of you deciding to leave, and what do you think most people are staying put for?
Yeah, good question. I think for most people, they really don't want to buck the trend publicly. They really don't want to do that. They're very unwilling to. And I think it's people perhaps like you and me who are more willing to just buck the trend and to say, no, I believe in this. And so in Australia, the culture is very much that, and I mean, look, to some extent, it's like that here in America too, right? But sure. In Australia, it was just very, people just thought, well, you know what? My life is not that bad here, and it's going to be okay. We just wait it out, and you just take this medicine, and it's going to all go away. But that's not really actually going to be the case, because then soon they're going to say you need booster medicine, right. and so it's just going to continue. You're
never done. Yeah, you're never
exactly. Done. And it becomes the pretense for all kinds of other surveillance and control in our lives. So the fact that now there's been a lot more work done around digitally summing up and pulling together all the information of all the medicines you've taken, such that they are, this aspect of control. And the same kind of the parallel is like in the world of having a wealth tax or an unrealized capital gains tax. Well, now they're going to have to start looking at what assets do you actually own, so they know whether to apply that to you or not. So it's a similar kind of thing, right? These aspects of control and digital identity and all of these aspects are now coming in, and it's really funny because maybe 20 or 30 years ago, there was this whole idea of the Australia card, the Australia ID, and people were very, very strongly resisting it at that point. But I think to what we were saying earlier, that complacency, Australia having 27 years without a recession, and I think to some extent fiat has helped enable this. So China and the connection between China and Australia, and having a lot of sales into China, and having a lot of like a big property, what they call property boom, which I think of it more like a property bubble, but basically the fiat credit drives these huge bubbles. And so Australia really had a lot of a mineral industry, right? Resource extraction, and a lot of other industries had been either regulated away or made less competitive because of electricity prices going high. And so I think this has led to a very much of a compliance culture, that you have to just comply. And that the years gone by, if you think maybe 20 years ago, or even up until recently, people used to think of Australians as these tough men. You think of like Steve Irwin, Steve Irwin and Paul Hogan, and these guys who are literally going to wrestle a crocodile and have a drink and have a smoke, and it's all right and she'll be right. That stereotype is very much gone, I would say. I think, and growing up in Australia, that was very much the feeling, that you kind of live amongst this culture of tough men and people who don't take crap, basically. And then it just seems like the culture just really went down, and that now that whole idea of rebel, outlaw, larrikin spirit is very much gone. It's now very much a compliant culture, very docile, and very permission-seeking. Now, some of that could be that aspect, the cultural degeneration in a way, but part of it is also the state has just become so much more powerful. They have a lot more surveillance. They have a lot more kind of vehicles and tools and helicopters and things that they can use to subdue people. And so anytime a protest even starts, they come out full force and they will use all sorts of techniques. And so in Melbourne, there were some protests going on. And so they would use techniques like kettling, this idea of kind of creating a perimeter around the people. And these are unarmed people, and they are mostly peaceful people, right? They really are peaceful in these protests. For the most part, it might have been like maybe a few people who are violent or whatever, and then that becomes the pretense to then become a very violent aggressor against the whole mob of them, even though maybe, and for all we don't know if that was just like some random person trying to, use that moment to be violent or whatever. But for the most part,
a plant.
Yeah, could be. I mean, for all we know. And so basically they really just came back with overwhelming force. And there were some really crazy things being done, like social media posts being scanned, and everybody saw that story of the poor pregnant lady who had made a Facebook protest because she made a Facebook page, and then the police rock up and arrest her while she's pregnant and about to go to her ultrasound in an hour or something. So it was very confronting for a lot of people, but I think a lot of people just sort of kept thinking, oh, it won't happen here. Oh, let's just comply and let's just wait. And I think the other aspect of it is certain parts of Australia have basically been coerced to take the medicine. They've been saying, if we don't hit 80% double medicine, you're not getting your freedom back. If we don't hit 90, and then they just keep moving the bar.
Saying that. Yeah. Literally telling him that. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. And so similar with New Zealand, right? Jacinda Ardern, the PM, Prime Minister of New Zealand, has basically openly said, we're going to create two classes. We're going to create the medicated and the unmedicated. It's just insane.
Yeah.